Luke DeWitt worked his way into the lives of millionaire couple Carol and Stephen Baxter. He befriended the couple and went on to control and manipulate Carol Baxter for 2 years using a multitude of fake personas. Eventually, he would poison the couple and watch them from his phone as they died in their home. He made a fake will, making him the director of the company. However, in spite of this cold, calculated planning, he eventually was arrested by the police for their murder. This is the senseless killing of Carol and Stephen Baxter. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's case is a really recent one. It's one that I've followed, and it's one that I think brings to question a lot of different ideas behind motivation, because it is difficult, where Luke DeWitt is concerned, to absolutely state what his primary motivation was. Certainly, I'm going to go into the mindset of this individual, what I feel is the psychology of this particular individual, but this is somebody who basically was a predator masked as, to some degree, a hero in the lives of Carol and Stephen Baxter, an individual who inserted himself into their world like a leech, just refusing to let go. And even though there were elements within his nature that concerned Carol and Stephen Baxter, and certainly the wider family of the couple, he was very effective at maintaining a mask of acceptability, both within the work that he did for them and also in the wider community. So it's one of those cases that's really interesting to dissect. Also, before we kick off with today's true crime case, I'm just going to bring in my lovely merch. My True Crime Queen merch. Look at that. It's beautiful. Also, for those of you in the know, it's 440 GSM, which means that it's a really high quality. You will not get anything in the price range of this hoodie that has the quality that this one does. I promise you, we literally source it ourselves and it's awesome. And thank you for all the messages that you send us about the fact that you all reflect that particular attitude when you receive your goods from us. So if you fancy one of those, as I said, it's in the description below. Today's case is one of those that's really perplexing, really disconcerting, and genuinely makes you think about the people that walk into your world. And some of those quiet assassins, I think that's probably the appropriate word to use where Luke DeWitt is concerned. He was somebody who is described, quote, as kind and gentle. Is that giving you a bit of the old BTK vibes? Ooh, Luke, lovely, kind and gentle. BTK, Dennis Rader. Really nice guy, devoted family man. But at the end of the day, still merciless killers. So Luke DeWitt's described this way. It is as far from reality as you will find out during this case. But nonetheless, even in court, he had 3 people come forward and just describe what a great guy he was, how lovely he is. But there again, we all know you're not a merciless murderer 99% of the time. In fact, you might only be that merciless murderer 1% of the time. The rest of the time, you might be okay. You might even be a diligent little volunteer like Luke DeWitt was. But there again, so was, drumroll, Ted and Bundy. So at the end of the day, what you do in your spare time doesn't necessarily reflect the kind of human being you truly are. Also, if you want to be a chameleon, then find places and spaces where people will say, oh, he does A, B, or C, therefore that makes him a good human. It's very effective at disguising your true nature. So in spite of the fact he was described as kind and gentle, he was also known to be somebody who was a bit of a computer geek. In fact, a quote from the court was that he was a boring computer geek. He'd graduated with a degree in computer science, so clearly he's a bright individual. It's hard to do computer science, and he was somebody who was obviously effective at that. He's an IT worker, and he was also a freelance website designer. So he's somebody who's skilled, and he's somebody who's also clever. He volunteered, as I said, because Again, if you're going to craft and cultivate this idea that you're a good human being and you might have a bigger plan at hand, and bear in mind, when you're somebody who does something like computer science, you're probably very good at figuring out patterns. You probably have an idea of the expectations around you when you analyze how people's perceptions will impact on consequences of your actions. So if you have that kind of analytical mind, if you're good with doing those things, then you can probably build a picture in your head of what needs to happen to produce the ideal human being as far as society is concerned versus what society imagines a murderer to be. So one of the things that I think will have been helpful for him, aside from the fact that he's quite bright, is, like I said, he will have analysed possibilities and potentials and thought about what he wants in his future and what he's going to need to do to achieve that. And to mitigate the horror of what he's going to do, he's cultivating this almost captivating picture of somebody who's a little bit strange, a little bit weird, a little bit on the fringe, but also really embedded in the local community, because he volunteered at a soup kitchen. He helped with the town carnival. He was actually described as someone who really loves to be involved where people need help, and that he has a good sense of what is right and wrong. Going to take a few issues with that based on the fact that we're dealing with somebody who needlessly and senselessly murdered a lovely couple of human beings and totally destroyed a family because of that. The idea that he loves to be involved where people need help. Well, if you're a predator, what are you looking for? You're going to look for vulnerability. Simple as. And let me tell you, on top of the obvious, which is when you're working with the homeless, you are meeting lots of vulnerable people, maybe people that you can test negative actions on without being discovered. Also, you will be working with people who genuinely are empathetic, compassionate, and loving. And that means that they've got fractures, because those kind of people, they like to help. So maybe if you need money, opportunity, they're good people to manipulate in your favor. So as much as people are saying all these nice things about him, the truth is what we are dealing is a darkness in his personality that he's very good at covering up. And the idea that he has a good sense of right and wrong is laughable. So he presents himself basically as this really upstanding, kind member of the community. He barely socialized with others. So he is somebody who spends time by himself until, of course, we get to his relationship with the individuals that he murders that I'm talking about today. But he tends to be by himself a great deal when he isn't around this particular couple. He didn't drink. He spent a hell of a lot of time playing at home on his computer simulation games. So he spends a lot of time by himself. He actually lived with his mother. His father had passed away sadly in 2021. We can't deny, understandably, it's very sad to lose somebody very close to you. And this could have created an impact trauma-wise where DeWitt is concerned. He's obviously somebody at 34 who we would expect to some degree to have left home, but that could be because financially it isn't viable, which could also be why money is very important to him. Maybe he wants a different life than the one he's living. Or maybe he's really happy at being, to use the word again, a leech on his mother. We get to a point where Luke DeWitt starts to befriend this older couple, and he also starts to work for them, Stephen and Carol Baxter. Stephen and Carol Baxter were 61 and 64. Carol and Stephen were super successful. They owned a shower mat company. It's called Casplash, which was founded in 2012. They basically found a gap in the market. So their company sold bath mats, and obviously there are lots of companies that sell bath mats, and it would be very hard to break into an industry where it's so prevalent that you can purchase these. But they could see that there was this gap in the market where it came down to curved or corner showers. So they figured out how to design bath mats that fitted around these modern curved or corner showers, along with matching towels to make your bathroom look super nice. And so their business got really popular. Stephen himself was also a global lead of operational risk and assurance for a multi-billion-pound transnational real estate firm, Jones Lang LaSalle. So we are talking about a very bright human being. Stephen isn't just somebody who has his own company, he's also trusted with another very important role. And that gives us insight as to just how manipulative DeWitt is in this case. Also, Stephen and his wife were really keen members of the West Mercia Yacht Club. For those of you who don't know, West Mercia is a really small town. It's really lovely. And essentially, when you think about yachting, well, it's a particular class, isn't it? Like, I've never even been to a yacht club because I'm a bit of a dinted 10 and I'm not sure that essentially they'd even let me go. Although I do like nautical themed clothes, so there could be a chance still. What I'm saying is clearly they are people of means and they work hard and they enjoy their spare time. They had children, Ellie and Harry, and they were also very loving grandparents and very loving parents per se. And they lived on Mercia Island in Essex. Now, when it comes down to the family, they are close. They are really loving. Carol was actually described as, and I love this, she was described as the definition of the word love. She was full of life. She basically pushed others to be better. She was somebody who was a great motivator. But like I said, the undercurrent of her nature is just love. And Stephen, well, he's smart as a cookie. It's as simple as that. He was described as the definition of intelligence. He was very strong. He was a very reliable person. He was meant to be somebody who could see a problem and solve it. He was very analytical. He was a deeply critical thinker, incredibly hard worker. And his main passion was to work hard to provide for his family. And again, we're given insight into a loving couple who have a very strong relationship, have a really tight family, who are adored and are in return adoring to those that they love. Now, initially, the couple meet DeWitt in 2012, 2013. He'd basically been brought into the couple's business selling shower mats. And the reason he was brought in was he had an acumen about building websites. So he's brought in to build the website, which is incredibly important, believe me, as somebody who once developed an app, not personally, obviously. I'm not a coder. And if I tried, well, it wouldn't end well. The point is, I digress. It's very expensive to create websites. It's very expensive to create good apps, etc. You want to bring somebody in who knows what they're doing because it is your front-facing opportunity with the public, and these days we live online. So you need to have something that's really effective. So when you bring somebody into a business and they are good at doing this work, you want to hold on to them. And I think that Luke DeWitt, from the get-go, sees an entry point. We're talking about an older couple who are very business savvy, who are successful in what they do, but also this is an evolving young person's world. There are kids out there who can code, who are incredible, who can do a better job than 60-year-olds who've been in particular interested for years. No matter how bright they are, they haven't been at the forefront of new technologies. Young people have. So it's often the case that younger people will be brought into companies to create websites because it is your front-facing service and you want to sell. It's how you keep your business going. But I think that Luke DeWitt was thinking about this older couple who weren't that tech savvy, and that means that there is a fracture there that he can exploit. So he starts to get closer to the couple, and this takes us several years. He starts eventually visiting their home regularly, like every day. How infuriating would that be? And again, this tells us about the nature of this couple. The fact that he is genuinely intruding on their privacy and time constantly. And they were allowing this to happen, not because they're weak, but because they are lovely people. And again, that's a fracture in our foundation, isn't it? Where these predators are concerned. If we're good, kind, compassionate human beings, we don't like to say no. We like to make people feel that we see them and that they're welcome. And certain people know how to exploit that fully. So he's inserting himself constantly in their day-to-day life. And the couple's daughter actually said that one of the really upsetting things is that DeWitt was really looked after by her parents. The parents apparently saw him as being very lonely, especially after Luke DeWitt's dad had died, and so they take him under their wing. They'd let him join in, and this must have been quite frustrating, I would imagine, for family members, because understandably, we all have friends, and sometimes our friends are our family. But when you have a close, loving relationship with your children, as this couple did, when another human being is just constantly present, it means that you don't have the core time that you would like to have with them because they're always there. And like it or otherwise, no matter how much we're comfortable with certain people, if they're not in your inner circle of trust, such as your direct family, you're not going to talk to them as you would, as freely, when you're in front of somebody that is not in that inner circle of trust. And I feel that the family from the get-go had some misgivings. This is just my assumption about the relationship from what I've read and the evidence I've looked at. I feel that there was just something on an instinct level that concerned them a little bit. A friend of the Baxters also commented that DeWitt was literally always there and commented, quote, he was never rude, but just very odd. An odd character. He wouldn't say a lot, but he was always there, always. He'd just be sitting around having a cup of tea with them, but he was always there. Now, again, if you are predatory in nature, you are going to try to exploit every avenue possible. And exploitation can take so many different routes. So there's the very obvious financial exploitation that we'd see where somebody is taking money from people to sustain their own life. That's clear exploitation. There's coercive control exploitation, etc. We know about all the different layers and levels on this channel. But when it comes down to the way a predator can exploit, it's a game. So to you or I, somebody coming around for a cup of tea, we're just giving them that cup of tea. Maybe we'll even give them a piece of cake. And that's okay occasionally. But if that person's coming every single day, multiple times sometimes, and we're giving them cups of tea and maybe giving them some food, it's actually really expensive in the long term because they don't have good boundaries. And that could be for a range of reasons. Of course, it could be that on a social level, they just don't understand the cues that maybe something developmentally is going on with them. But if you are predatory in nature, there is nothing more fun than getting things for free. There is nothing more fun than drinking the tea and eating the food of somebody that you know you are playing. And that, for me, is what we're seeing where DeWitt is concerned. It's not surprising to me that he enjoys gaming, and goes without saying, I'm not saying that gamers in any way, shape or form are people who are manipulators. I'm not saying that. That's not true. What I'm trying to say is his fascination with gaming, his fascination with being online by himself playing in that kind of very insular way is very much, in my opinion, about him controlling worlds. Because when you get good at certain games, understandably, that makes you feel that you have an acumen, it makes you feel good about that. But also there is a level of complexity to them that when you overcome them, you feel that you can manipulate certain things. You can get fast-tracked to certain elements and areas. You can learn the cheats and break the codes. And I think that for him, that again is a cyber experience of the manipulation that we're seeing play out on this micro level with this family. Because he's there constantly. Because anyone with a grain of understanding social relationships and close relationships realizes that that's too much. The only person that should be with you 24/7 is your partner or your children. And many people wouldn't even think that that were the case. Many people would say even seeing your children every day might be too much. Not me. I want them to live with me until they're 78. Literally. I want them to carry me out in a box and then get on with their lives without me, having never left my side. Anyway, just a little bit of my mental salad. So DeWitt is inserted in every element and area of their lives. He keeps Carol company on walks. He goes to the gym with her. So he's micromanaging her behavior. And Carol, she starts to trust Luke DeWitt. She's particularly interested in his attention to her issues medically. So she has a thyroid condition and he's very much engaged in trying to help her take her medication on time, and he's making sure that she's looking after her health allegedly. But like I said, imagine being somebody with the psychology where you really want to control and you're in it for the long game. You've got time. You like playing with, you like controlling people's experience, you like seeing the outcomes of your impact and behavior, and you're watching this and witnessing this as if you're directing a movie. That's the kind of personality we're talking about where DeWitt is concerned. Now, on 9th of April 2023, a horrific discovery is made, and it is utterly blindsiding and the worst case scenario for the Baxter family. Stephen and Carol are found dead in their home in West Mercia, and they're found dead by their daughter. Their daughter Ellie had actually gone to visit her parents on Easter Sunday, but found them dead in their conservatory. And it is harrowing listening to her in the background when she is recognising that her parents are not coming back, that they've gone. Because what you hear in Ellie is authenticity. You connect with the gravity of her grief. It is so powerful, so devastating, so upsetting, and so absolutely pure. And this is why when you hear people faking the kind of reactions that we hear from Ellie, it's so tangible, it's so obvious. You have to be an A-list actor to get away with faking something so raw, so human. And listening to Ellie, you also feel the love. It's profound and devastating. So she's gone to visit her parents and unfortunately finds them dead in the conservatory, and immediately in that moment she's totally traumatized and she clearly calls for the emergency services, but she also in between is texting Luke DeWitt. Ellie thinks she needs to tell him because he's always there and you don't know what to do in that moment, but making that call to 999, it feels so distinct from the personal. It's the only way I can describe it. I've had to make that call with my own traumatic loss. And you know you're speaking to somebody who's going to care, but they don't know the person that you've lost. They can't react and respond to you on the telephone in a way that you need, which is that human understanding, that connection, that knowledge. So it makes perfect sense that Ellie messages Luke DeWitt because he's always present in a parent's home. She doesn't know what's happened, but she also wants somebody to feel what she's feeling, to walk that bridge with her. DeWitt arrives at the home. Ellie at this point is called 999. Again, I've been there. The poor emergency service call handler just didn't understand a word I was saying. It was as simple as that. I was just too traumatized. So at this point, DeWitt takes the phone from her and he basically describes himself as a friend to the 999 call handler. He's so calm. He's so calm as he is conveying the situation over to her. And that is the first red flag. I appreciate some people are very good in a traumatic situation, but bear in mind, this is a man who's been involved with the family for a long period of time. He's been at the house on a daily level. He goes to the gym, etc. with Carol. And we're now in a situation where he's just really calm, really helpful. Some would say a little bit on the over helpful side, because even he, in this situation, should be acting in a very anxious, fearful, sad, devastated way. Something awful has happened and his friends, his mentors, his employers are dead. But no, absolutely not.
Hi, I'm Luke. I'm the friend. They just called me over.
Okay, right. Are you with the patient now?
They are there.
Right, okay.
They're like, they're stiff.
You're saying there, so just to confirm, how many people are hurt?
Sorry, I can't hear you. Well,
How many people require help, just to confirm?
2.
Right. Right. Stay on the phone with me. Right, just down the colleague. Just down the phone with me, please.
So I need to come outside. It's their daughter, you can hear.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So I'm organising help for you now. Just stay on the phone with me. Right, so just to confirm, so liaise with a colleague. Just down the phone with me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you inside. You can hear their daughter's devastated. I'm here.
Just tell me exactly what's happened from what you know, please, just so we can all go to the best help.
Well, we've just turned up to the house and we hadn't really heard from anyone for about a day and a half. So we came round and their daughter got here first, and I think they got round to the back, saw through their conservatory that they were sitting in their armchairs not moving. There's some blood from her mouth. She's slumped over, yellow, blue fingers, cold, they're stiff, like hard.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm all going to someone to speak to.
We've got someone here, first responders here.
All right, that's absolutely fine. So I'm just going to stay on the phone with you just so we can organise that appropriate care, because I understand we've got people involved. So I am someone who can assist you, obviously. I've CCTV'd everything as you found it. Is there anything else that we can do for you or the patient's family at all?
Well, her daughter's devastated, so I'm sure there's something.
Also, he then says that he'd basically been the last person who'd seen the couple alive on Good Friday, and he's calmly given the account about what had happened. You can hear that Ellie is absolutely beside herself in the background. And at the scene, a very pleasant police officer who he's talking to and is kind of being quite reassuring and kind to him is told by DeWitt, I need to check on them. I always pop in. And he added that the reason he goes around, the reason he pops in, is that Mrs. Baxter was prone to accidentally taking overdoses of medication. And also she sometimes took the same pills 6 or 7 times. Now, immediately we're brought into, this is possibly what's happened land. Bear in mind, when you're in that situation where you don't know what's happened, you don't know whether something terrible, tragic, purposeful, horrific has happened to these human beings. You don't know. All you know is they're dead, but you're in a scenario of complete shock. You're not really starting to think about, ooh, I come round because I'm a good person. Look at me. Just going to paint myself in the best light possible. But also, I just want you to know as a police officer that she does overdose quite a lot. Oh, how convenient. Oh, how convenient that you're already bringing in to sharp focus the idea that maybe it's, death by misadventure, some kind of accidental overdose. Doesn't explain why Stephen's dead, but hey, drugs are a bit of an issue here. And, she's a little bit prone to making mistakes. And this is just forming a picture that we wouldn't expect to see at the very get-go of 2 people's bodies being found. And when you watch him being interviewed outside the home, personally, I find it deeply disconcerting. I'm immediately suspicious. And I imagine as much as the officer is incredibly pleasant, when he basically says that obviously they'll probably be speaking to him again very soon, he's thinking, because there's something about you that's really weird.
And you say you last saw them on Friday?
Friday, I think I got home just before 8, so that's when I left.
Mm-hmm.
And me and Steve were just talking about work and just the business, because Carol can't work anymore.
Yeah.
Last year, she's not been able to do anything.
Okay.
So we're just having a chat, but he didn't really feel up to it and just asked me to go. So
that's fair enough.
I was going to come back tomorrow and
just check on them again.
use the gym, and I'm used to checking on. I always pop in.
Yeah.
Because they wanted this weekend, Easter weekend.
Just left them to it.
So with me, I was out with those 2 last night. Took them for dinner for Eddie's birthday, and Steve's mum, Irene, who lives in London, was worried she wasn't answering her calls either.
Right.
Which again isn't unusual. They were time away.
Yeah.
But because we were concerned, me, Ellie, and Marcus drove past here. 6, 7 last night.
Okay.
Just to make, we were all worried. But because we saw the blinds are down and the light was on,
you thought,
they're doing what they want. They've got their weekend, lights are on, they're just ignoring us. All cool.
Okay.
So then Eddie called me this morning, and I was always, I think we're both a bit uneasy.
Yeah, as you would be. Understandable.
And Eddie popped by first, saw the blinds were still down, immediately panicked. I was meeting them anyway, but Marcus called me and just given that they're in the chairs, they're not moving, not replying. So I literally ran from home to
here to come check.
To here.
Okay.
And just as I got here, they just smashed the back window
to get in. Okay, fair enough. So you last saw them alive on Friday. Cool. And have you seen them today? Did you go in to see them yourself?
I have been in there, yeah. And I went upstairs, the paramedic asked me to get all of Carol's medication that she's got a lot. Because sometimes she'll have various things over the years and for various operations she's had. And so I went upstairs and got anything that I thought looked like a tablet drawer downstairs and put it in a brown box for the paramedic. I don't know if any of it's valid, but I know Carol.
That's right. Yeah, they like to know what people take. Gives them an idea as to what they suffer.
You don't know what
she's actually taken.
Because quite often she might take. She has every morning levothyroxine. But sometimes she forgets and she could take it 6 or 7 times. I know that's
really
that, but I mean, she doesn't know. Or
she doesn't know she's taken it loads of times.
No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think that's all we need to know for now. Yeah. We'll be in contact again, I'm sure, in the near future.
Now, following Carol and Stephen's deaths, Luke DeWitt doesn't disappear at all. No, quite the contrary. So he remains really close with the daughter, Ellie. In fact, at this point, I'd say he's portraying himself as a best friend, which is grotesque and disgusting and despicable. And again, what does it speak to? It speaks to a man crafting a character. It speaks to an individual who wants to seem innocent, who enjoys watching somebody else's pain, because bear in mind, he's close to her in this moment. He's seeing the agony, the fallout, the collateral damage of the loss of her parents, and he is watching this. Again, when you consider serial killers, what do they like to do, particularly the organised ones? They like to be forensically involved in what happens after the deaths, and you could not be more involved than being present with the daughter. So again, it speaks to that antisocial personality mindset. It speaks to that psychopathy and narcissism we would expect to play out in cases where people like Luke DeWitt are concerned. So he's acting this role and really going for it, that he's the most supportive human being possible. He attends the funeral. And so again, this public show of sympathy and empathy. Now, initially, the deaths of Carol and Stephen didn't actually present as suspicious. So they're looking at them and they can see that there's no obvious injuries. So there's no obvious cause of death at the get-go. Understandably, because of the fact there aren't any injuries, initially they look for carbon monoxide poisoning, because that would make sense. When people are found both dead and there doesn't seem to have been any altercation, nothing's been stolen and so on and so forth, and it doesn't seem that either of them has sustained any injuries, you think about the silent killer, and carbon monoxide poisoning certainly is, but that's quickly ruled out. Also, there's actually no evidence to suggest whether the deaths have been caused by the couple themselves. So they don't think that this is a murder-suicide scenario, because understandably you'd likely see some kind of note there, particularly when you're talking about a very loving couple and a loving family. Even if they had decided that it was time to go, they would certainly have left something that indicated that they were prepared and ready to ease the burden and ease the pain of their children's grief, because even though it's very difficult to imagine that your parents would take their lives in that way, equally, if they explain it in a letter and make you feel that they were ready and there are reasons behind it and that they love you, it doesn't give you a sense of closure, it just gives you a sense of understanding about the deaths. However, none of this is there. So they keep investigating. Weeks later, the post-mortem toxicology is returned, and wow, the couple, it turns out, have been poisoned with a lethal dose of fentanyl. That's happened 2 days before their bodies were found. I'm sure a lot of you know what fentanyl is, but just for those of you who don't, it's a synthetic opioid. It is so unbelievably powerful that a tiny amount can kill you, genuinely. It's responsible for a huge amount of deaths in America, less so in the UK, but nonetheless, because it is such a massively powerful analgesic, it's something that is abused. So this is what's actually killed them. And like I said, it's 2 days before their bodies have been found, even though DeWitt tells the police officer that he's always popping round. Well, why didn't you pop round over those 2 days? Now, Carol's post-mortem reveals that her cause of death was combined fentanyl and promethazine toxicity with terminal bronchopneumonia. And the provisional cause of Stephen Baxter's death was given as cardiomegaly and alcoholic liver disease with fentanyl intoxication. So at this point, a murder investigation is launched. And of course, who is immediately in the line of suspicion? Well, Luke DeWitt. He'd been the last person to see the couple alive. Also, he happened to have access to fentanyl through his father's medication. So they immediately think, when we're looking for suspects, this person certainly has access to the medication, but also he was present all the time in their lives and has been the last person to see them alive. And whilst these suspicions are growing, the police are also doing a more thorough search of the Baxters' home, and they find items in the home that weren't there at the time of the Baxters' deaths. First of all, they find fentanyl patches, and also just happens to be a will. Just a will there. Just a will. You know, police have kind of had a look around before, had not noticed any of these fentanyl patches, hadn't noticed a will that just happens to be lying about. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I don't know about you guys. When you start at home on a Friday evening, maybe having a glass of wine, takeaway, maybe some cheeky chocolate. If you're not sat within about 5 meters of your will, just in case, I don't know what you're thinking. I mean, if I don't have my will, my health insurance, my life insurance, my independent passcodes for all of my computer requirements, that means you can get into my bank when I die, I don't know what I'm doing with my spare admin time. I mean, everybody has a will somewhere within their direct vicinity, particularly because it's what you want, isn't it? You want members of your family who you might not be leaving anything to just walk in and be able to be like, oh, I see that Auntie Emma isn't going to be that generous with me. Maybe she will come off the Christmas list this year. Or maybe I should work harder in my relationship with her. By the way, I have a really nice relationship with my niece and nephews. Not putting in some personal experience there. Just saying. We don't often have a will hanging around. But yeah, how convenient. The will is there. And this will, this miraculous, suddenly appearing will that seems to have just been teleported from the ether into the room, it was only this really short will. It wasn't this long-held document that Stephen and Carol's solicitors had. I mean, why not just write a new one without any of your legal individuals to oversee it? It makes no sense. Stephen and Carol would never have done that. But this will is quite strange because it doesn't go through what we'd usually see, which is just the provision made and what's going to be left to who. This has this really strange situation where it seems to want to focus on Luke DeWitt's dear friendship with them. So basically it says that Luke DeWitt's going to become the director and person of significant control of the Baxters' successful shower mat business. How unbelievably convenient. So this guy who's inserted himself in their lives and has basically been employed by them and I would say used them in a multitude of ways, he's now going to be the most important person in the company. I mean, he doesn't sound guilty at all, does he? I mean, if you're the kind of person that gets suspicious over a will that just arrives at the scene of a crime and then that will totally overrides the will that had been long held at the lawyers and thus inserts a completely irrelevant member of their life into that will to the degree that that person has significant control over the company. That doesn't sound suspicious. That wouldn't make me think, is Luke DeWitt a massive murderer? No, I'd just be like, Luke DeWitt, incredibly good professional, excellent at his job. Probably the most important thing to write in my will, that is one that's just been printed out recently, is that he is somebody who's got to take ultimate control of the company. I mean, what a pile of BS, right? So understandably, the police now feel this is their guy. And in July 2023, Luke DeWitt is arrested on suspicion of murder. And good. Because bear in mind, we are talking about the absolute destruction of a lovely family. We're talking about the murder of two compassionate, empathic, loving people who looked after him. And this is how he's repaid them. But it's going to get a lot worse than what I've just told you. We're not just talking about ultimately the murder. We're talking about something so long, so protracted, so disgraceful. It speaks of a malevolence so deep, so dark, so unusual that Luke DeWitt should never walk the streets again. He gets arrested at an office he's renting on the University of Essex's campus in Colchester. At this point, he's taken into custody in Chelmsford. And when he is actually arrested, he doesn't argue. He doesn't seem very surprised. I would say there is a level of, oh, maybe things are getting serious. So it's not necessarily that he's computed he's going to be arrested, but he's obviously aware that it could happen, to the degree that when it does happen, he doesn't resist, he doesn't shout, he doesn't say, how dare you? Because they are normal responses. If somebody walked in right now and said to me, Emma Kenny, I'm arresting you on suspicion of A, B or C, I'd be like, whoa. Number one, this is absolute BS. There is no way you can do that because I've done nothing wrong. And even if there was a crime scenario that was unfolding in my life around me, and then I was accused of it in such a context, I would lose my shit unless I was the person who was indeed guilty. I wouldn't just happily be like, okay, put the actual handcuffs on me and let's deal with this down the station. I would be freaking out, but he isn't. So again, something very removed about his personality. At this point, he's actually charged with 2 counts of murder.
Bit of privacy, that's it. Luke, the reason we're here today, mate, is I'm I'm going to have to arrest you, mate, all right? And that's on suspicion of murder. All right, as part of a police investigation, you've been identified as being a suspect in relation to the deaths of Caroline and Stephen Baxter, 27th and 9th of April, 2023, all right? Okay. So that means you don't have to say anything, but may harm your defence. If you do not mention any questions, something you may later on in court, anything you do say may be evidence. That's so we can interview about the offence, enable any forensics that we need to be done, prevent any interaction with any co-defendants, all right, and to prevent any loss of damage or any evidence. Yeah. All right. So we'll be taking you up to Chelmsford custody, and then there'll be a process from there, mate. All right. Have you been arrested before? No. Never been arrested, no. No. The process will be explained throughout. Well, obviously, we're limited information what we've got at the moment, but anything further will be explained throughout the investigation. All right. Because I've never met you before, and obviously because of the offence of the allegation, I'm going to put you in handcuffs, but they're going to be at the front stack, buddy. All right. Just leave everything in your pocket in a minute, mate.
Anything upstairs, like phone, keys, wallet, anything like that?
No, it's in my pocket.
It's all on you, still.
Yeah.
Do you have any medical conditions?
No.
That we need to be aware of at all?
No.
Cool. Have you got like an epileptic fit on us or something?
No, nothing. What have you got on your pockets, mate?
Fine.
In what pocket?
That one.
That pocket there, and keys in the other pocket?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll leave them where they are at the moment, all right? We, when we get in the car, don't put your hands in your pockets, just leave them obviously out, and we'll get that out when we get to custody, all right?
Fraser receiving him?
After his arrest, Luke DeWitt's phone is then seized by police, and wow. There is something that always strikes me about the narcissism of certain individuals. When you think about serial killers, even very violent offenders who kill, who aren't necessarily serial killers, one of the things that is quite blindsiding is how often they keep notes on the killings. They can't help but relive. They can't help but write them down so that they can make sure they don't lose detail. They want to hold on to the agony that they've caused. They want to be able to return again and again. And I think that that arrogance and narcissism, the idea that they're not going to get caught, is what drives them. They think they're better than, bigger than. They think they're more intellectual, more capable than the authorities. So consequently, they're not thinking, oh, right, I'm evidencing my guilt. They're thinking, no one's coming for me because I'm so brilliant. I'm so capable. I'm so better than all those other criminals who get caught. So they trip themselves up. And that's exactly what Luke DeWitt does. Because firstly, when they look through his phone, he's literally got pictures, so photographs of Mr. and Mrs. Baxter dead in their armchairs. I mean, the horror that we are talking about as regards the mindset of a human being that can do this is not sufficient actually killing them. He's recording killing them. So DeWitt had actually installed a mobile security surveillance application on his phone, which had allowed him to monitor a camera in the Baxter's home and watch them die. That's what we're talking about as regards the depths and depravity of this man. So this idea that he's this nice, kind guy, an ethical volunteer in the local community is absolute bollocks. This man is a cold-blooded manipulator and killer. This is a man who's planned. This is a man who's enjoyed manipulating. This is a man who was directing a movie that he was in charge of. And this is a man who ultimately has kept mementos. He has pictures of the dead couple. In DeWitt's home, they also find a number of fentanyl patches. He, of course, says, oh, no, they just belong to my late dad. And he said they also belong to his grandfather. But they also find a bag containing several metal tacks that are found alongside pill casings. So we're talking about the actual casings that you can buy to put things in. So these tacks are near these empty pill casings that essentially could be filled. Now bear in mind, as DeWitt was the last person to see the Baxters, that was on Friday, the 7th of April 2023, police believed that that was the day that Luke DeWitt had slipped fentanyl into the drinks of Stephen and Carol. He is then seen leaving the home, and he actually double locks the door on CCTV shortly before 8 p.m. Obviously, as I've said, he set up a camera inside their home so that he can watch his work play out. So he knows what's happening, and he's sitting there watching the couple die remotely through his phone. How psychopathic is that? How deviant? How dark? It's not enough to be the master of their destruction. He wants to be the person conducting the orchestra as they're taken into death. He's enjoying it. Think about all the time he had to change that scenario, a call to the emergency services, a sudden prick of conscience that tells him, don't do this. This is terrible. These are people who cared for you. No, none of that happens. He just watches and waits until the final act in the cultivation of this situation he's been waiting to play out evolves. That's how malevolent his nature is. The following day, DeWitt actually created that will I was talking about. Yeah, it's on his phone. So this fake will for the Baxters that apparently is going to make him the director of their shower mat company. And then the following day after that, after knowing he has executed, albeit quietly, his employers and his friends, after he's forged a will so that he can make gain, he calmly takes his mother out for breakfast and ice cream. I cannot imagine how that woman feels now. I cannot imagine what it must feel like to know that you've raised a monster. And that isn't to blame her in any way. Bear in mind, he will have absolutely have worn the mask of acceptability, the mask of success, the mask of being a kind person with her too. So she will have had her whole world unravel. In particular, we know she was also likely dealing still with the grief of losing her life partner. This must be absolutely catastrophic. She is a victim too in this circumstance. Now, when it came to the trial, DeWitt said, I'm not guilty. This isn't true. I haven't done any of the things that you're accusing me of. So he faces his 6-week trial at Chelmsford Crown Court. Prosecutors stated that Luke DeWitt had murdered the couple by slipping fentanyl into the drinks of Stephen and Carol, because in DeWitt's home, first off, they found the bag containing both opened and unopened fentanyl patches. It was also heard that DeWitt had actually been using a series of personas to manipulate both Stephen and Carol from 2021. What I was talking about earlier on about the long game. This guy is somebody invested for the long game. He's been creating and cultivating this end for a long period of time, and he's been enjoying doing it. So over the years, he's been creating these personas to communicate with Carol, but also to communicate with their daughter, Ellie. So these personas all start when he's pretending to be a doctor from Florida called Andrea Bowden, who apparently has got this experience with dealing with the autoimmune thyroid condition, which is Hashimoto's, which is a disease that Carol Baxter suffered from. So Hashimoto's disease is basically an autoimmune disorder. It causes things like hyperthyroidism or an underactive thyroid. Rarely the disease can actually cause hyperthyroidism or an overactive thyroid as well. But nonetheless, this is what she is dealing with. So this man is now pretending to be this doctor who's a real expert in the field. So he's directing Carol's medical treatment. This actually basically led to a continued deterioration in her health because, of course, he knows nothing about what she requires and is doing everything to harm her. Then he actually pretends to be several members of a fake support group who are dealing with a condition that she's got. So this Hashimoto's support group is now created to suggest essentially that she's got a group of allies. So he creates these fictitious people who've all been treated by Andrea Bowden to give more credibility to Dr. Andrea Bowden's advice. And the couple's daughter actually told the court that she'd tried to push her mum to go to the doctors because she felt that she needed to get some more expert advice in the UK. And her mum had actually gone there. But her mother was also completely brainwashed by Dr. Andrea Bowden, even though we know that Dr. Andrea Bowden was Luke DeWitt. And he even got Carol to send videos of herself to this fake doctor because he's trying to, again, seem to be really invested in her care and also to emphasize that Dr. Andrea is really invested in her care. But this is just all about watching the outcome of this twisted, abominable action. It's horrific. Her daughter also said that sometimes some of those videos would actually be filmed by him. So he'd film them for Carol and he'd find it funny. He's finding it funny not because there's some kind of joke there. It's not a shared joke between him and Carol. It's that she's a joke for him. That she's totally convinced of who he is and what he's creating. And he enjoys that power. He enjoys that manipulation. He's horrific. And DeWitt wasn't just trying to convince Carol of all this stuff. No, no. He actually goes so far as to suggest that one of the fellow Hashimoto sufferers group, who was his support group, one of the members has a sister called Jenny. Oh, and Jenny just happens to be a theatre producer. And wow, it turns out that Ellie, Carol's daughter, well, she wants a career as a vocalist. So isn't that convenient? So now Ellie's being brought in with this idea that there's some possibility for her future career. So he's playing with every member of the family. And DeWitt went so far as to send voice notes pretending to be Jenny by putting on a high-pitched voice. In one recording, he can actually be heard perfecting this voice, saying, "Hi, Carol, it's Jenny. It's Gerald's sister, yes. So nice to finally speak to you after doing all these messages." And you can hear, can't you, when that plays, that he is completely trying to create this voice that's going to convince both Carol and Ellie that this woman, Jenny, is real. And Jenny actually asked Ellie to send voice recordings of her singing, which Ellie went ahead and recorded whilst at her parents' house with the help of DeWitt using his microphone. This man is a cold-blooded psychopath every day of the week. Absolutely 100%. Just think about the lengths he's going to convince all parties of what is, as we know, a complete fake world. All the while knowing it's a fake world. Watching Ellie's excitement, stroking her ego, telling her she's wonderful, no doubt, saying it's going to be the start of something incredible, just making her feel that those dreams and that talent that she has could be something that could change her fortune with this contact. And it's all a lie. Following the Baxters' deaths, Jenny, this person who's going to help Ellie with her singing career, actually sent her a message saying, "Oh no, my darling sweetheart, I'm so sorry." The word arsehole isn't big enough. The hole in arsehole is nowhere near big enough to fit DeWitt through it. Seriously, there's a whole other universe of arseholes that we need to actually fit this absolute bastard through it. Because I cannot compute how a human being can do this to a family. And Ellie apparently broke down in tears in court because she said that she just felt really embarrassed because she believed DeWitt's lies. And that is so sad because Carol's daughter does what we all do, believes the best in people. That's what makes so many of us vulnerable to these kind of predators, not because we're stupid, quite the contrary, because we're good, because we would never do that to somebody else. And it's so heartbreaking to know that Carol's daughter felt shame, felt embarrassment, felt humiliation because she believed the lies. That's what good people do, because you don't go around questioning everyone, thinking that they have this kind of capacity. DeWitt was playing the long game. He was doing it well. And she is no fool. In fact, she highlights how clever, capable people can find themselves in these situations. She went on to tell the court, "Jenny was a trusted person. I thought she was there to help me. I thought she was a real person." And they carried on talking after her parents died because she believed that that relationship was a genuine, caring one. Now, it turned out, and this is breathtaking, DeWitt had 80 electronic devices, and some of them have been used to create more than 20 personas to manipulate the Baxters. 20. Each communication by the personas was even able to be traced back to his devices, which DeWitt had in his possession. So this guy trying to suggest that he's not banged to rights and guilty is insane. The daughter of the Baxters, Ellie, told the court that DeWitt had lied his way into our lives over a decade. She described him as a man so manipulative. He hacked his way into our lives a decade ago, schemed and thoroughly planned my parents' demise. The prosecutor said the murder followed quite an extraordinary long-term case of manipulation. I mean, my God, it did. It goes without saying, it absolutely did. However, when it came down to his defense, DeWitt claimed, and this is where we're all going to, I don't know, laugh ourselves out of the room if it were not actually about something so unbelievably serious and heartbreaking. Because DeWitt goes, yeah, okay, I have an explanation for this. And bear in mind, one of the things about DeWitt is I would say he was very confident when he went into court. I think he genuinely believed that he could pull the wool over the eyes of the jury and literally answer questions where the prosecutor was concerned in a way that made him sound like he was just an innocent individual who'd been wrongly accused. So when this information is coming out about these fake personas and they have evidence that he's created these fake personas, he's thinking, well, you know, I can't get away with that, but I can create a story that fits with why I've got these fake personas. He says, you know what? You're right. Those fake personas were created. And you know why? Because, drum roll, Stephen Baxter wanted me to create them. Sorry, does Stephen Baxter, as in the victim in this case, one of the victims in this case, he wanted you to create the personas. He did. He asked me, he solicited my advice and guidance and help to actually create these fake personas because he wanted to help his wife. Sorry? He wanted to help his wife. Yes, he did. He wanted to help his wife. And I am such a diligent, lovely, helpful human being that I was like, it sounds like a great idea. We should definitely do it. So I did it. I kid you not. I kid you not. So he said the actual mechanics was me, but it was instructions from Stephen. So he said that they were used by Mr. Baxter to improve his wife's health and mental health and also their relationship. Sorry, can you just run that by us again? Yes, I was doing it because I'm deeply pro-social and I was doing it to improve Carol's mental, physical and relational health. I'm just an all-round good guy. Where are you going? Sorry, is the prosecution allowed to leave when they're cross-examining? What are they coming back? Why has she got a tuna? Why has she got a large tuna in there? Oh, are they allowed to hit me with a large tuna? As the judge presiding over this case, I am going to suggest that I'm going to actually sustain the fact that that was accepted. I'm going to sustain it. I'm not going to object to that behaviour. I think you'll find in paragraph 4.196 to the degree of 12, there is a small written objective here suggesting that you can indeed be hit by a big tuna, because apparently there is a persona here that I've created in court right now called Charlie Tuna Hands, and Charlie Tuna Hands has basically additionalized the legal formalities, which means that you can indeed be hit with a large wet fish. So let's move on there. I'm not saying that happened, just saying that I had great satisfaction if something like that happened, because, you know, he's trying to bring Stephen into the frame here, isn't he? This lovely man. How dare he? Fortunately, the prosecution is flipping great and they literally destroy him. His cross-examination falls apart when he's basically got the heat on him because they've got messages between the fictitious characters and Stephen Baxter, which clearly show that he absolutely believed that these people were real. There was no realistic way that Stephen was involved in creating these personas. And Ellie had actually said as well, her parents had started to become irritated that DeWitt was so frequently at the house in the months leading up to their deaths. She said that her parents had started to believe that DeWitt was weird. They described him as basically nerdy weird, but they were obviously feeling more and more concerned about the fact that he just wasn't acknowledging that there are certain expected boundaries, you know, keep a bit of distance now and then. Also, as well as the manipulation, it turned out that DeWitt was drugging Carol Baxter. She was being poisoned on a regular basis. He'd go out of his way to make her things like smoothies that he'd claim were really rich in health benefits that she'd been recommended for by the persona Dr. Andrea Bowden. Now, in reality, they were literally a cocktail of drugs, and he would disguise the taste, masking them by lemon, iodine, and turmeric. But these smoothies that were meant to make her feel more vital, more healthy, they were making her more unwell. They were making her feel tired. They were making her feel increasingly confused. And It almost made her look like she'd had a stroke or she had dementia. And the prosecutor said that the pain he was inflicting on her was for Luke DeWitt's own satisfaction. And during a hospital scan, Carol Baxter, because she'd had some stomach pain, they found a metal tack inside a medicine capsule in her system. So what I talked about earlier on, those metal tacks that were basically next to the medicine capsules, they found one in her body. He was giving her those. Prosecutors said that DeWitt had been preparing rinks for the couple since 2021 up until the deadly final cup. It's like he was seeing how far he could go, how much silent damage he could do, all the while being this menacing presence in their world. When it came down to an impact statement, it was read to the court by the couple's daughter, Ellie. She referred to the moment she found her parents' body. She said, "I have never known an emotional pain to physically hurt so much. It was like my insides were on fire. I screamed and I screamed." During the trial, DeWitt gave evidence, and when he did give evidence, he gave it from a wheelchair. Yes, from a wheelchair, guys. In fact, this wheelchair, it doesn't seem, was required, and prosecutors did actually allege it was unnecessary and was an effort to attract sympathy from the jury. But again, he's living his life acting, isn't he? He's been doing it so long, he's been creating and cultivating these false narratives for such a long time that at the end of the day, he's just carrying it on. He's basically saying, "Oh, don't be nasty to me, look at me, I'm in health, you need to be nice to me, don't be cruel to somebody who's struggling." But it's all absolute BS. There is no way whatsoever that he is truly unwell. It is just another attempt to deflect the reality of these heinous actions. Another thing he was accused of during the trial is that he transferred several £1,000s to his bank account by using the Baxter's phone after they died. So the prosecution had said that before he left the address on Good Friday, he had used Mr. Baxter's device to transfer £6,000 to himself. And Tracy Ayling, who was one of the prosecuting party, she said, "You were using their devices, unlocking them, walking them around, looking at them at 6:14 p.m. The HSBC mobile banking is launched on the handset belonging to Stephen Baxter." She asked him, "Were you looking at his mobile banking?" DeWitt, of course, said no. She returned and said, "His laptop is being used and his nationwide mobile banking is launched at 4:20 p.m. until 4:22 p.m. DeWitt did say that that was correct. But then he suggests, listen, the reason that money was transferred was because Stephen owed it me. Yes, I imagine that's the case, don't you guys? That Stephen is going to DeWitt going, can you lend me some money? We're talking about an incredibly successful couple. Why would they be asking him to lend them anything? Now, when it came down to the closing at the trial, the prosecutor's closing statement was that DeWitt eventually murdered the Baxters calmly, coolly, and in a way which had been entirely planned, maybe for some while. Following that 6-week trial, on the 20th of March 2024, after 8 hours of deliberation, the jury unanimously decided that Luke DeWitt was guilty of the murders of Carol and Stephen Baxter. All of us agree that was the only verdict that would ever have been just. 2 days after DeWitt was found guilty of their murders, he was sentenced. And at the sentencing, Justice Nicholas Lavender branded his actions cruel and senseless. He said he was sure that DeWitt had extracted the fentanyl from patches prescribed to his father before his death. He said that the fentanyl was crushed into a powder, which was given to Carol and Stephen in a drink, which they took as they trusted DeWitt to prepare health drinks. The judge told DeWitt, "It's distinctly possible what motivated you was a desire to control others." Also, there was no notable mental health issues brought into court. So when it came down to aggravating factors, we're talking about a man who went out of his way to kill people who trusted him after a protracted time of harming them. And yet there was no mental health concerns or prior issues which would give us any license to believe that this man was anything other than sane at the time of his actions. Like I said, a cold-blooded psychopath. Unsurprisingly, DeWitt showed no reaction as he sat in the dock. He was given a life sentence, which meant he will not be eligible for parole for at least 37 years. And absolutely, he deserves every second of that time. To brutalise a family in this manner, to harm people who cared for you, you deserve the book thrown at you. You deserve a lot of books thrown at you, and the really hard-backed ones. Senior Superintendent Rob Kirby, who's the head of the major crime at Essex Police, said that he had absolutely no doubt that DeWitt would have gone on to commit more murders had he not been caught, and I agree. We're talking about serial killer at core. We're talking about an individual who can insert himself in people's lives for a decade and then murder them. We're talking about someone who enjoys toying with other people, pain inflicting, death inflicting eventually. We're talking about the darkest of personalities. The absolute dark triad exists in this moment when we describe him. That superintendent said DeWitt was one of the most dangerous men he'd ever seen during his policing career, so you can imagine the spectrum he's seen and that he stands out as the most dangerous. He went on to say he fooled everyone. He befriended people, came across as very amenable, very helpful, but in the background he was a cool, calculated killer who spent years planning the demise of Carol and Stephen Baxter. And that's truth, isn't it? Years. The son of Carol and Stephen Baxter said, Luke DeWitt took what we all held most sacred and found a way to extract it for himself. He said, our life will forever be punctured by the gravity of his actions. My eldest daughter will forever have lost the wealth of wisdom and experience my parents possessed. My mum was the definition of the word love. I do not refer to April of 2023. I refer to the day Luke began his foul games torturing and drugging her. Unbeknownst to me, I already lost my mum a long time ago. I feel great sadness looking back on the videos of her when she was acting strangely and seeing him in the background giggling and smiling, knowing he's the one inflicting this pain, as we were all dolls in his dollhouse, victims to his manipulation. My father, on the other hand, is the definition of intelligence, a critical thinker, a problem solver, and a person people could absolutely rely on. Most of all, thorough to an astounding level of excellent, revered within his industry. It was almost as if it seemed like he never broke a sweat. He sacrificed his life for us to live on. And when the days came when he could finally take time and retire and have time to teach me, a young man, naive and keen at the beginning of his adult life, it was stolen away by someone we all trusted the most. Luke DeWitt completely destroyed everything we held close to our hearts and every memory and future dream we could have shared. All I can do now is focus on my family by loving and protecting my partner and baby and our future members of the family. We have an important role of not only mother and father, but also to capture the memory of a now sadly lost grandmother and grandfather. Oh, my heart breaks for them. My heart breaks for them. Ellie Baxter, the daughter of Carol and Stephen, said, my mum and dad are dead, but they didn't just die. They were taken from me and my young children. My mum lost her freedom, her will, her ability to function 2 years prior to her murder due to her illnesses. An illness no one could help her with or understand because it was contrived by Luke DeWitt. Mum felt so alone and lost, and there was nothing I could do other than to give her my shoulder to cry on and cuddle her. My mum was full of life and she was always pushed me to be better. We'd have girly days out at the spa and plenty of shopping trips. She was my best friend. We would laugh together, we would cry together and support each other. Over the coming years, we'd planned to go travelling as we both wanted to go to Japan and India, a dream of ours that now will never be fulfilled. My mum loved my son to bits. She would constantly buy him toys and take him out for walks in his pram. My dad was a strong man. There are no shortcuts in life, he would always say. He worked every day of his life and provided for my mum, my brother and I. There was nothing we ever needed. He loved us all. He said, my son just fitted perfectly in his arms like my brother and I did. He lit up and he was excited for my new baby, a new baby he never got a chance to meet. We used to stay up talking late in the night and watch horror films. My dad used to love playing guitar in the summer. We'd have bonfires and the guitar would always come out. Watching my dad play and sing so freely is where my love for music began. Dad initially got my brother Harry into guitar lessons when they would go together, and then he learned to serenade Mum and I. Never again will I be able to have a jam with my dad. Neither will my brother. It is horrific to imagine what this family has endured, and for Ellie and her brother knowing that their children will never get to truly know the incredible humans that created them. I'm glad DeWitt has got a minimum of 37 years. I hope that Carol and Stephen haunt every moment of his time in prison. I don't imagine it will be a very nice place for somebody of DeWitt's nature. And he deserves everything that comes his way, as far as I'm concerned. I'd love to know your thoughts on this case. Isn't it just striking and shocking and horrifying that a beautiful family like this can have their whole world blown to smithereens because of a human being so dark, so calculating, so selfish, so manipulative that life means nothing. You're just a game to be played. And in the end, in this case, a game to be terminated. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Take care and look after yourselves. See you next time.